There are rumors that have come up to the Hill of a secretive project within the Department of Defense.
I've been in a Twitter war.
All of the 7 mountains of society to be taken over.
Those people in the teachers' unions are Marxist, cultural Marxists, often gay.
We're trying to recruit you to tuck your penis.
If you believe in evolution, why don't you just kill people?
I'm like, well then let's go fight. I'll just kick his ass. How's that?
Let's see if I get canceled for wearing the shirt. Welcome back to the Fever Swamp Review, a podcast from the... What? All right. Okay. Welcome back to the Fever Swamp Review, a podcast from the... All right. Welcome back to the Fever Swamp Review, a podcast from the Colorado Times Recorder. I'm your host, Heidi Beadle. And today, we're going to be talking about one of the driving issues within the ecosystem of the Fever Swamp, right? In American politics, one of the best strategies is to take a big issue, right? Something that is not just kind of like one issue, but is many issues jammed together, and to take that and to like try to distill it down into like one issue and then just like beat that horse until it is like bony, gluey horse pulp. So today we are going to be talking about abortion. Last week I had the pleasure of covering Colorado's kind of preeminent pro-life event, the March for Life. And in the run-up to that event, I caught a screening of the film The 1916 Project. And yes, that is a riff on the New York Times 1619 Project. So I saw this film at Colorado Christian University. And today we're just going to kind of talk about abortion, this giant issue that has been driving both conservative and liberal politics in America since, for a while. But most notably since probably late 1970s, early 1980s. So we'll start off, right? Abortion is this thing that is many things, but in the context of a lot of conservative politics, abortion is a moral and ethical issue. It is most clearly described as, like a matter of faith, right? It's Christianity and the Bible and the Christian right are primarily the organizations that are engaged in the vast majority of anti-abortion activism. To be quite honest, I don't know if there is any kind of like non-faith-based anti-abortion activism group. And certainly ones that I've encountered and reported on have all been very clearly, firmly aligned with, the Christian faith. And that, it like many things in American politics, right, particularly conservative politics, it's easy to kind of present Christianity as this kind of monolith, right? Like it's the Republican Party and the Bible and they're fused inseparably together because what God wants is what Republican wants, what Republicans want, and, vice versa. But it's a little trickier than that, right? Again, big issue, very nuanced. Let's just make it one thing. There are, within Christianity in America, there are, as most people know, all kinds of denominations, right? And they each sort of have their own take on all kinds of issues, particularly, when it comes to abortion, it's pretty much split. The majority of kind of conservative denominations are anti-abortion and explicitly mention abortion in their statements of faith and things like that. But you have a lot of mainline denominations, the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America, the Presbyterian Church of the United States, the United Church of Christ, which are very progressive and have I think UCC is like abortion is good, but I think like PCUSA and ELCA are kind of like, it's complicated. We don't condemn anyone, but maybe it's not great. Whereas, the Southern Baptist Convention and Presbyterian Church in America and other denominations are very clear that life starts at conception and there's no exceptions. Well, I'm going to play a little clip for you guys, right? As you might imagine, doing the work that I do, writing about the things that I do, my social media algorithm is kind of bizarre. But I saw this clip the other day. This guy, Dan McClellan, he is a Bible scholar. He is a more liberal kind of Bible scholar guy, but I saw this little video of him talking about abortion in the Bible. So I'm going to share that with you real quick, and then we'll jump back into our discussion.
The Bible treats a fetus as property and not as a person, although the view on when a fetus became a person differs from the Hebrew Bible, Greco-Roman period Judaism, and early Christianity. Hey everybody, I'm Dan McClellan. I'm a scholar of the Bible and religion. And there's only one passage in all the Bible that actually directly addresses this question. And it's not Jeremiah 1:5. It's not Psalm 139. It's not Luke 1. None of these are addressing the personhood of a fetus. They're addressing God's foreknowledge. They're addressing God's oversight of gestation. They're addressing exceptional circumstances where things don't go the way they normally do. The only passage that actually addresses the personhood of a fetus is Exodus 21, verses 22 through 25, which is legislation that imposes penalties should two men who are fighting accidentally injure a pregnant woman. And there are two outcomes that are described. The first outcome is that the injury causes the woman to miscarry, in which case the husband imposes a fine of his choosing, and there is arbitration there so that it does not become exorbitant. The other outcome is permanent injury or death to the woman, in which case talionic justice is activated and the penalty is life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth. In other words, whatever happened to the woman, that is then done to the perpetrators. And what this indicates is that the woman was considered to be a legal and a moral person, and the fetus was not. The fetus was treated as property. And this perspective agrees with the view throughout the Hebrew Bible that breath was the necessary and sufficient feature of life. This agrees with early rabbinic discussion about when the fetus becomes a person. It's when either the head or the majority of the body, should the person be born in breech, leaves the birth canal. And this agrees with the mainstream of tradition with Judaism ever since then. But we see something different in Greco-Roman period Judaism, and this is most clearly found in the Septuagint translation of Exodus 21, verses 22 through 25, because there the two outcomes are not miscarriage and the woman's death. It is the death of the fetus if there is no body, and the death of the fetus if there is a body. And what this seems to refer to is the death of the fetus if it has not yet been fully formed, and the death of the fetus if it has been fully formed. And what this reflects is one of three different Greek philosophical perspectives on ensoulment, or when the soul enters the body. According to the Pythagoreans and the Epicureans, that happened at conception. According to Aristotle, that happened at the quickening, which is when the fetus is fully formed and now begins to move on its own. According to the Stoics, it happened at birth with contact with the outside air. And so the Septuagint translators seem to be adopting the Aristotelian perspective. Now, we don't see any discussion of this anywhere in the New Testament, but we know that early Christians were debating this as well. They didn't like abortion, but it became a much different and much more serious crime if the soul was present in the body. And so there were Christians who argued for the Pythagorean/Epicurean view. There were those that argued for the Aristotelian view and those who argued for the Stoic view. And around the 4th century, Christianity arrived at a consensus. And from the 4th century to the 19th century, the consensus view was the Aristotelian notion that the fetus became a person, the soul entered the body at the quickening. Now, why didn't Judaism take up the Greco-Roman period Jewish view? Because the commitment of Greco-Roman period Judaism to Greek philosophy was largely abandoned when Rabbinic Judaism was organized toward the end of the 1st century CE. So the mainstream of Jewish tradition held to the Hebrew Bible position, whereas Christianity held to the position that it had adopted from Greco-Roman period Judaism and had been informed by Greek philosophy.
So there you have it. Obviously, a lot of Christian denominations disagree with this perspective or have their own perspective. You know, it's kind of all over the place. And the kind of historical, scholarly perspective does nothing to stop, this cottage industry of, Christian influencers and pastors and Republican politicians from making abortion their primary issue. One of those folks is Seth Gruber. He is the kind of founder and organizer behind this group called the White Rose Resistance, which was a anti-fascist organization during Nazi Germany that has, like so many other figures from the time, been appropriated by the anti-abortion movement. So Gruber he wrote a book called The 1916 Project, and now he has turned it into a film. And his whole thing is going after Margaret Sanger, the founder of Planned Parenthood. And lots of criticisms about Margaret Sanger, lots of them very valid. She was a eugenicist. She did speak to groups like the KKK. She hung out with racists. This has all been very thoroughly documented, and Planned Parenthood has acknowledged it. A number of Planned Parenthood affiliates have issued statements kind of condemning Sanger and discussing the need to acknowledge the harms that she has done and move forward into their mission today. That hasn't stopped Gruber from, putting together this film and this book and relying on kind of this very interesting cast of, Christian academics to kind of prop up some of these claims, right? The film is a real who's who of, conservative Christian influencers, right? So you've got Eric Metaxas, who his Bonhoeffer scholarship was like so bad that Bonhoeffer's existing family has come out and just like asked him to shut up. He was famously involved in punching a anti-Trump protester, and he's currently involved in a defamation lawsuit involving former Dominion Voting Systems executive Eric Coomer because he platformed Douglas County's favorite person, Joe Altman, on a podcast episode where Altman presented his crazy claims about the Antifa conference call. In addition to Metaxas, you've got Bill Federer, who's on the board of local Christian organization Truth and Liberty. Just last summer, Federer was on a speaking tour with Richard Harris, talking about a bunch of, right-wing conspiracy theories, the New World Order, globalists, all of these sorts of things. So these are the kind of people that are in Gruber's film, talking about Margaret Sanger, they had one lady who discussed trans people, and Gruber, I saw him a few years ago also at Colorado Christian University, and he gave the speech, and you really see how their political priorities kind of mesh together in the conservative Christian right, because the two big issues for them are abortion and transgender people. And you wouldn't think they would necessarily come together the way they do, but Gruber has managed to kind of shoehorn them into things. And, part of it is also discussing sort of blaming Planned Parenthood for comprehensive sex education and all of these things. Which is hilarious because, as I've reported, as other people have reported, in a number of states in this country, if you actually go to the school districts and ask them about their sex ed curriculum, you're much more likely to find curriculum taught by anti-abortion pregnancy resource centers here in Woodland Park and in Colorado Springs and a number of school districts. They have speakers and curriculum from Education for a Lifetime, which was developed by Anti-Abortion Crisis Pregnancy Center Life Network. And, that's all over. Not as much Planned Parenthood sex education, but lots of, pregnancy center stuff. So whatever. But, right, Gruber manages to blame Planned Parenthood not only for, the abortion holocaust, but also for trans people, for sex ed, and again, kind of continuing these grievances from, the sexual revolution to now, and really driving that home. The main guy that he has talking during this film is a fellow named George Grant, who I reported on this in the kind of review I did of the film for the Colorado Times Recorder, but our very own Logan Davis actually went to one of Grant's schools, very familiar with him and his curriculum and his experience, arguing in favor of slavery and again, like Metaxas, like Federer, when you talk about like academics within the Christian right, it's just people who make stuff up, like David Barton. They have this conclusion that they want to make, and they have this kind of rhetorical argument that they want to push forth, and they just kind of pile things up, even if it makes absolutely no sense, right? So like a big part of this film was looking at Margaret Sanger and her connection to various radicals, right? So Sanger, not only was she hanging out with eugenicists and these racists and influencing the Nazis, but she also, they spent a lot of time talking about her relationship with Emma Goldman. And it's wild to hear someone outside of a folk punk band talk about Emma Goldman, let me tell you. But they went on this whole tangent and kind of talking about Emma Goldman and communism. And then by the end of it, though, they're talking about Dietrich Bonhoeffer, who was the German pastor, theologian, who was, murdered for his part in a plot to overthrow Hitler. And, they have this section where they talk about Bill Haywood, who hung out with Margaret Sanger and how he was a communist and blah, blah, blah. And they're talking about Bonhoeffer. And it's interesting because as much as these guys like to talk about Bonhoeffer as this important figure, who he absolutely was, they don't mention Bonhoeffer's contemporary, Karl Barth, who also very, very close with Bonhoeffer, lots of correspondence. Barth authored the Barmen Declaration, which is kind of an important document in the Reformed Christian anti-Nazi kind of movement. It was this kind of open letter that a number of Reformed churches in Germany at the time signed on to, speaking out against Christian nationalism and the kinds of things that the kind of policies that Gruber and Federer and all of these people in that orbit are now kind of advocating for on the political level, right? The 7 Mountain Mandate thing. So it's bizarre, right? Again, they're like shoehorning historical figures and facts into places to make their own kind of silly arguments, and this idea that like Bill Haywood, who was, a socialist and a labor organizer, but, if we're going to condemn Bill Haywood for being a communist, these folks would certainly condemn Karl Barth for being a communist, and probably Bonhoeffer as well, if they really wanted to do some actual academic research that didn't, prop up evangelical political ideologies. But I digress. It was an interesting film. And then after the film, they had a guest speaker from the White Rose Resistance, the new one, not the World War II era one, obviously, come and speak to them. And it was this guy named A.J. Hurley, who in 2022 was arrested for stalking and harassing an abortion doctor in California. So, that's cool. Here's his conversation, some of the things that he said to students there.
The White Rose is starting chapters all across the country. Sean Bateman, will you raise your hand back there? That's our state chapter leader for Colorado here. So if you want to get involved, we would love to work with you, and we would love to work alongside of any pro-life groups available. So this is a evil state in many ways, but I love coming to college campuses for this reason. I mean, you guys are the future. You're the resistance. You're the future of America. And I love to reach young people. You are the future. Doctors, lawyers, politicians. You're going to be shaping the minds and hearts of the future. I want to do a few things today, okay? So I'm going to give about a 15-minute talk. Then we're going to do a Q&A. But what I'm going to do is this. I'm going to give you 3 things that are necessary as young people, college students, going into the next aspect of your life. You're turning the page and you're going into the next portion of your life where you're going to be doing your life's work. I love college. I went to the Masters University in Southern California, another Christian college, very formative time, but it's not real life. So many of you here are completely, I'm so sorry to say, unprepared for what life is going to throw at you. Many of you here will not be believers in the future. Many of you here will abandon your faith, unfortunately. It is my heart to strengthen you for the work ahead of you so that you look back in your life and you say, it wasn't a life wasted. So I'm going to give you 3 things that must characterize your life if you want to make it worth living. If you want to look back at your life and die in your deathbed and look before Christ and say, well done, good and faithful servant. But before I give you those 3 things, I just want to give you a quick intro. So I got started in the pro-life movement in a very unlikely place. It wasn't, at the March for Life. It wasn't at a political rally. It was in the sterile halls of a hospital when I got a job at my dream job, UCLA Medical Center, putting little babies on ventilators. I was essentially looking into a womb every single day, but these babies, instead of being in a womb for another 3 months, they were born prematurely on my ventilator, and I was putting them on life-saving resources, breathing machine, sustaining their life. And I had been a Christian and pro-life forever, but it wasn't until that moment that the lights started turning on, and I realized something terrible. That the only difference between this child and then the one that was having its life in arms and legs lifelessly pulled off of its body was a fiat decision as to somebody telling us which life was valuable. In one case, we're saving its life because mom says it's valuable, and babies way older were being killed at the very same hospital as I was saving them. I knew I had to do something, and so I started getting involved. My wife and I started going down and offering to adopt babies, offering to take care of women's resources, give them rent, give them anything they needed to choose life. God started doing incredible things, and it was just very clear that God had a different path for my life. And a few years later, I was marched out of the same hospital for not complying with the vaccine mandates. And so I had this crisis of conscience. How was I going to spend my life? What was my life worth? What was it all about? And I've learned a few things over the years, and so the 3 things that I want to tell you this evening are: 1, if you want your life to mean something, you must know the truth and never betray the truth. Our Lord said in the Gospels. That you shall know and the truth shall set you good. You're off to a great start. So if you're going to make your life worth something, if you're going to be a culture world changer, you have to know the truth in order for the truth to have its liberating effect in society. So crazy that after Jesus uttered these words to Pontius Pilate, Pilate's response was, "What is truth?" So shocking that this to me, you can look. This is a character quality of a man who was looking at truth incarnate in the very face and couldn't recognize it. So Satan will do two things. He will either keep you from the truth by getting you to believe lies, or he will get you to compartmentalize the truth. So Satan will either tell you to believe lies or compartmentalize the truth. Believing lies, it's not a baby. Compartmentalize the truth, babies aren't moral persons. Believing lies, it's a clump of cells. Compartmentalizing the truth, morality and politics don't mix. The second thing that we need to do is not only know the truth, but we cannot abandon. We have to abandon the comfort of our silence. We can't abandon the truth. Does anybody know what Ephesians 5:11 says? Anybody? Ephesians 5:11. Ephesians 5:11 says this: "Have no part of the unfruitful works of darkness, and instead expose them." See, Satan knows that if he can market everything moral as political, he can ensure your silence. He's like, okay, what do we see the last few years with COVID, with transgender drugs for children? Where has the church been? Where have pastors been? Where have you and I been? It's because Satan has learned something. The devil has learned something. The enemy knows this, that if he can just manipulate and market everything moral and ethical, everything God cares about as political, he can just get us to shut up about it. So it's not enough that we know the truth. We have to abandon the comfort of our silence. So I will never forget the day that my silence ended. I was in the halls of the hospital, went down to the lunch hour. The head of the department, my dream job, the head of the department came down at the lunch hour. I was a huge department, tons of people there. And I was sitting just having lunch, minding my own business. And the head of the department comes and sits down with, there's probably 20 people, 20 RTs in the department. And she just out of nowhere goes, "I can't believe these Republican men forcing laws on women's bodies." And the Holy Spirit's like, "Say something, AJ. She brought it up, dude. You're not going to get in trouble. She brought it up. You didn't bring it up. She brought it up. Say something." And I'm just like sitting there like, am I going to be quiet about this, or am I going to say something about this? Am I going to be a man and defend children, or am I going to say nothing and keep peace at work? I forgot who said it, but brilliant line, that verbicide always precedes homicide. If they can get you to stay silent in the midst of oppressed people being sacrificed in the vernacular, it will not be long before that silence will continue on into enshrining that into law. And we're seeing that here in Colorado. Right now in Colorado, abortion is enshrined to the very day of birth in the state. And not only that, just a few miles from here, if you don't believe me, you can type in Warren Hearn Clinic, openly advertising third trimester abortions for no reason at all in Colorado. You can kill a baby here to the day of birth. How in the world does this happen? One thing: the silence of the American church. The GOP is not called to be the light of the world. The church is. Right? CCU, incredible institution, but CCU is not called to be the salt of the earth. You are. Your Republican leadership will never be more catechized in the value and dignity and worth of unborn children than you and your pastor will be. Because the effect of the gospel in the lives of children, his children on earth, is that you are the light of the world. You are the city set on the hill. You are the salt of the earth, pervading all of the festering wounds of society, bringing freedom and liberty. This is why slavery existed for thousands and thousands of years, and Christianity was the only thing to stop it.
I feel like maybe I mentioned this like in the last episode, and you see the similar argument with on the Christian right. Like those folks, they love to point out, Christians helped in the slave trade, which is also true, but it like kills me when this argument comes from somebody who's like a part of the Southern Baptist Convention. Look up why there's a Southern Baptist Convention. All these people who oppose these specific things love now, in 2025, the year of our Lord, to take credit for them. It's kind of a frustrating rhetorical practice that a lot of these folks engage in, right? Like, they love to do this. They love to take credit for like slavery and anti-fascist movements during the Holocaust. It's just wild. And I feel like sometimes people act like, I'm this crazy liberal and I'm just coming up with stuff and making things up to like, overthrow capitalism or whatever. But like, it's the perfect example, right? Ridiculous. Anyway, here's the rest of his conversation.
But if the salt is thrown out, it's become useless and is good for nothing to be trampled under our feet. Brothers and sisters, this is the calling of our lives. So I'll tell you what, did I speak up that day at the lunch hour? I swallowed every single little bit amount of courage, and I said nothing. I said nothing. And I went up back to the 5th floor of the hospital, and I looked into a womb filled with emotion. I went into the bathroom and wept like a baby, got on my knees and said, I will never be silent again. So this is the thing. Thank you. People ask me, what do we need to do to change America? Why are babies being killed to the tune of 3,000 children a day? How in the world could the American church sit silent during the Holocaust? It's because everybody just wanted to survive. Me at the lunch hour. Could you imagine? You don't have to do this amazing thing. You don't have to be a pro-life speaker. You don't have to go work for a pro-life organization. You just need to stand up in the hour of need. If you cannot stand up for these children at the lunch hour, how in the world will we ever stand up for Christ at the guillotine? So the third thing, brothers and sisters, is that we have to accept the consequences. It's not enough that you know the truth. It's not enough that you abandon the comfort of your silence. But you have to be willing to accept the consequences when they come. We love our comfort. Jesus Christ uttered the greatest words of social reform ever when he said these words: "Unless a grain of wheat falls to the ground and dies and remains alone, if it dies, it bears much fruit." How did Christians take over the Roman Empire in 3 centuries? Through fidelity to the truth and willingness to suffer and lay their lives down. This is how we change. We do not change with chariots and horses. We don't change society with political might. We, like Christ, lay our lives down and we accept the consequences where they may lie. And so I would just tell you, as future leaders, do not abandon Christ. Wherever the truth, Christ is the embodiment of truth. He is the Logos on earth. We don't just betray him when we refuse to profess him as Lord and Savior. We betray him when we stay silent in the face of lies and injustice. I'll close with a quote before we go to Q&A. There was a guy, many of you know, Dietrich Bonhoeffer. Anyone? Dietrich Bonhoeffer? So his best friend was a guy named Eberhard Bethke. And he put this so well. He described the reason for the Holocaust and the problem in the church in Germany. And I submit this to you today. He says, "We now realize that mere confession, no matter how courageous, inescapably meant complicity with the murderers. Even though Sunday after Sunday, refusing to be co-opted, and even though we preached Christ Sunday after Sunday, during that whole time, the Nazi state never considered it necessary to prohibit such preaching. Why should they? So it became clear to us where the problem lay for the professing church. We were resisting by way of confession, but we were not confessing by way of resistance." 3 years ago, I got a call that I will never forget where 2 friends of mine were outside an abortion clinic in Washington, D.C. They said, "AJ, you need to come here immediately." I arrived. They found a box outside of an abortion clinic called Washington Surgery Center. And inside that box was 115 aborted babies, and 5 of them were full-term children. We turned that box over to the DC medical examiner, the DCPD, and it became clear that at least 2, if not 3, of the 5 children had evidence of partial birth abortion and that they were born alive. One of them was still in its amniotic sac. Completely impossible to kill a baby and it not being born alive if it's still in an undisturbed amniotic sac. One of them had classic partial birth abortion fashion, slit on the back of the skull. Another baby completely pristine, just labor inductions. And I'm looking into a 3rd trimester aborted baby, lifeless child. And it was then, it became so clear to me what my life's work should be all about. I will not waste another moment on the GOP or the political establishment, because the only thing that could end that type of evil is the Church of the Living God.
So that was my evening at Colorado Christian University. And then 2 days later was the March for Life. I started off the morning of the March for Life by attending the Mass for Life, which is, the Catholic Church's sort of service prior to it. I didn't, record or take any video or anything. It was a wonderful service. I do love a good liturgy, but the Catholic Church, right? Like, there's all these interesting factions within the anti-abortion movement, right? So you have the Catholic Church, which is long held doctrines on the sanctity of life, and then you have the Protestant Church, and the Protestant Church is broken up into a million different little denominations, and also non-denominational churches and these sorts of things, right? And sometimes they work together, sometimes they don't. I mean, for the March for Life, right? Obviously, the Catholics are out there. The Coalition of Catholic, or the Colorado Catholic Conference. I don't know. It's a lot of C words. But they come out and they work with various other organizations for the March for Life and this sort of thing. But sometimes you have very specific movements like abortion abolitionists who are kind of explicitly Protestant and Reformed Baptist and Presbyterians who don't necessarily work with the Catholics or the Charismatics as much, but they will occasionally kind of come and find common cause on various things, including the March for Life. So after the Mass for Life, I headed down to the Capitol for the March for Life, and they had this rally beforehand with a bunch of different speakers. And the main focus this year seemed to be opposition to Colorado's Senate Bill 183. And what Senate Bill 183 does, it taking the lead from Amendment 79, which passed overwhelmingly by Colorado voters last year, allows for public health plans, public employees to have abortion procedures covered through public funds, right? There had been a prohibition on that within the Colorado Constitution, and Amendment 79 repealed that. So now the Colorado legislature has passed legislation just to codify that into law, and it's currently headed to Governor Polis's desk to be signed. But the Catholic Church, so the archbishops put out, a statement in response to this. The issue they have, they have lots of issues, right, with anything relating to abortion. But one of the primary issues that they brought up kind of frequently is the fiscal note for the bill, right? And I feel like most people don't even read the bills the legislature passes, let alone dive into the fiscal note or go to title board hearings or anything like that. But the political activists certainly do, and I also am there. But the fiscal note for Senate Bill 183 kind of breaks down this funding thing, right? So they're going to take $1.5 million out of the Colorado General Fund, but it's going to save $1.8 million in kind of other funding streams. And the argument here, right, is that abortions are cheaper, it's cheaper for public health insurance to cover an abortion than it is for it to cover, a birth and a hospital stay and these sorts of things, right? So there's this kind of fiscal argument, or I don't even know if it's an argument or an analysis in the fiscal note kind of describing how abortion will save taxpayers money, or it'll be cheaper, or these expenditures will all kind of come out kind of in the wash. And anti-abortion folks, strongly condemn that. They view it as, I'm just going to let them speak for themselves, right? So first speaker was Brittany Vesely. She's the executive director of the Colorado Catholic Conference, and here she is discussing her opposition to Senate Bill 183.
Good morning, Colorado pro-lifers! My name is Brittany Vesely, and I serve on the board of Pro-Life Colorado, a coalition of over 50 organizations united to defend life, and I'm the executive director of the Colorado Catholic Conference. I'm also 17 weeks pregnant with my fourth child. And that makes marching with you especially meaningful. It is an honor to stand here with so many fearless defenders of life outside our state capitol, a place where sadly life has been under constant attack. While we celebrate the end of Roe nationally, here in Colorado we face something even more extreme, the Reproductive Health Equity Act, or RAE Act, which legalized abortion for all 40 weeks of pregnancy. In 2022, 36 organizations united as Pro-Life Colorado to fight RAE Act. Thousands of Coloradans spoke out, but the pro-abortion majority, especially lawmakers bankrolled by the abortion lobby's deep pockets, silenced our voices. Still, we are not silent today, and we will keep fighting. In 2023, lawmakers passed 3 more abortion bills, including one banning abortion pill reversal and targeting our pregnancy centers. In response, even more organizations joined Pro-Life Colorado, strengthening our voice. We also fought against Amendment 79, deceptively pitched to voters as cost-free. But now this year's SB 25-183 sits on Governor Polis' desk, forcing Colorado taxpayers to spend millions of dollars per year on abortions, even for out-of-state women. The fiscal note for SB 183 claims that it is cheaper to fund abortions than to fund births. It is a chilling measure of how far we've strayed from valuing life here in Colorado. Colorado has become ground zero in the national fight for life, but Pro-Life Colorado remains united. This year we pushed for abortion clinics to be held to the same regulatory standard as other surgical institutions. And we advocated for conscience protections for healthcare providers. Although those bills were defeated, we will not back down. We will continue to expose the harms of abortion in Colorado and advance a culture of life, both in the Capitol and through our statewide education initiatives. Post-Dobbs, America stands at a crossroads. Some states protect life, others, like ours, embrace a culture of death. But Lincoln once said, "A house divided cannot stand." America cannot stand half pro-abortion and half pro-life. We must be all in for life. Abortion is the human rights issue of our time, and today we march. We march for the babies, for their mothers, and for a future where Colorado leads in protecting life. Thank you, and God bless you.
And then we also had Jenny Lichter, who's the National March for Life president, also spoke and also discussed Senate Bill 183.
So this isn't my first time here in Colorado. My family and I love visiting your beautiful state, and in fact we'll be back this summer with a couple more kids along on our family vacation. But it's my first time at the Colorado March for Life. And let me tell you something about marching. I want you to know that it really matters. My own first March for Life was almost 25 years ago now, which is hard to believe. I'm not that old, I promise. But my first March for Life is when I was a college freshman at Notre Dame. And you're supposed to cheer at that part. Go Irish. Thank you. Okay. And I rode on an overnight bus all the way from South Bend, Indiana to Washington, D.C. for the National March for Life. And I was blown away by that first opportunity to witness the energy and the joy of the pro-life movement firsthand. And since then, I've been back to the National March so many times, and more recently, I've had the privilege of attending state marches all over the country. And I, like so many of you, are just constantly formed and inspired and energized by the experiences that I have had at Marches for Life. Let today energize and inspire you, my friends. Now, here's another reason that Marching for Life matters, especially in this post-Roe era, where the issue of abortion has become democratized. The witness of our collective voices raised together is so powerful. Don't underestimate that. Our political and cultural leaders do take notice of events like this one, so it's good that you're here. Thank you. Thank you. Now I know that here in Colorado, unborn babies and their moms have very little protection through all 9 months of pregnancy, so we have a lot of work to do here in your beautiful state. But that's what we're up to today. That's why we're marching, right? And despite the challenging legal, political, and cultural landscape here in Colorado, don't be discouraged, friends. Again, take heart from this day, from this beautiful and powerful day. How can we be discouraged when there are so many of us here together, standing shoulder to shoulder, united by our common mission? And how can we be discouraged when we know how this story ends, right? We know that life wins. Life wins. Now I'll share with you one concrete reason that I am encouraged, a concrete reason for hope. For decades, pro-life organizations and pregnancy resource centers have worked to protect moms from the harms of abortion and to provide resources and support to women and children and families in need. So here's my fun fact for the day. There are almost 3,000 pregnancy resource centers and maternity homes nationwide. That's a lot of beautiful life-affirming organizations in this country. That is a reason for hope. God bless our PRCs and the work they do. This morning I was able to visit one of these beautiful life-affirming organizations here in Denver, Alternatives Pregnancy Resource Center, just a few blocks away. And the next time I come to town, I'm looking forward to visiting some more. They're doing amazing work for moms who need a hand. Here's another fact for you. It's not a fun fact, but it's an important one. 6 out of 10 women who have chosen abortion would have preferred to choose life if they had the emotional and financial support that they felt they needed. That is such a call to action for every single one of us to do our part to make that support available and to make sure that women who need it know how to find it. So I'm asking each one of you to support your local PRCs. Volunteer, donate diapers and wipes, baby clothes, whatever they need to be able to make available to moms. Give them your financial support as well. And today I also have another call to action for you on a matter that's very urgent. As Brittany just mentioned, your Colorado General Assembly has just passed a bill that will require your hard-earned taxpayer dollars to cover the costs for on-demand elective abortions through Medicaid here in Colorado. This bill, yeah, no kidding, boo. This bill will become the law unless your governor vetoes it. And as Brittany said, pro-abortion members even had the audacity to say that this bill is good public policy because killing babies in the womb is cheaper than letting them be born and raised. No, thank you. We have to push back hard against this dangerous bill and against rhetoric that takes away a child's dignity and reduces their worth to dollar signs. So you have a job to do, Pro-Life Colorado. It is time to raise your voices and let Governor Polis hear you.
We also heard from Tamara Axworthy of Pueblo's A Caring Pregnancy Center and Rich Bennett from Life Network, who I had mentioned earlier. And they kind of spoke about some recent legislation and stuff like that as well. So,
good morning, pro-lifers. My friends, we are here today because we believe in the dignity of every human life. We are here because women deserve better than abortion. Babies deserve a chance to live. Families deserve real support. not a government that tells them that children are too expensive to exist. We are resilient, we are unwavering, and we will not back down. For decades, pregnancy centers across Colorado have been a beacon of hope. We have walked alongside women and men, offering real help, ultrasounds, pregnancy classes, parenting classes, housing, baby supplies, and compassionate care. But instead of investing in life-affirming support, Colorado politicians are pushing a bill that forces taxpayers to fund elective abortion. As we've already heard, their reasoning is it's cheaper for the state to pay for abortions than to allow poor children a chance to be born. Instead of seeing the value of every child, instead of helping struggling moms, instead of supporting families, our lawmakers have decided that the cheaper option is to eliminate children before their first breath. That is not compassion, that is not justice, that is eugenics disguised as public policy. Think about what this means. If the government can justify ending life because it's too expensive, where does it stop? Will we deny health care to the sick? Will we decide the elderly are too costly? A society that determines human worth by financial cost is a society in moral collapse, and we will not stand for it. Make no mistake, this is not about helping women. If it were, they would be funding real resources. Parental care, housing, education, parenting support. But that's not what they're doing. They're funneling tax dollars into the abortion industry while ignoring the real needs of women and families. And we demand better. We demand a state that values life, supports families, and empowers women to choose life without fear. We will not stop fighting because we know the truth. We know that life is precious, that women are strong, and we know that when women are given real support, they don't choose abortion, they choose life. So that's why we're here today, that's why we march, and that's why we will never give up. We will persist, we will continue to love and to serve, and we will never stop fighting for the women and babies who deserve better than abortion. Today, we all are here to march for life. Tomorrow, we will continue the work. And every day after that, we will stand strong, united, and unshaken until the day when abortion is unthinkable and every child and every mother is embraced with the love and the support that they deserve. We are here, we are ready, and we will never back down. Thank you.
You know, every day there are women and men in our state facing the biggest decision of their young lives, whether to move ahead with a pregnancy that they weren't expecting. And out of fear, desperation, and financial hardship, many of these women are going to feel that abortion may be their only option. And that's made abortion a $1 billion business in our country. Many abortion providers see pregnancy care organizations or pregnancy centers like us as a threat. That's because we give women and men the space to consider all their options and to receive services that could empower them to choose life. Now that's bad for the business of abortion. And this is why you see false claims against pregnancy centers like ours. Recently, a woman on our team had a conversation with a 20-something man who believed these smears against pregnancy centers. And based on that, he said he didn't support what we do. So she asked him, would you support a clinic discussing all 3 options available to women facing unexpected pregnancies, parenting, adoption, and abortion? And he said, yes, well, I'd support that. Do you think women deserve an ultrasound to confirm that they are pregnant, that the pregnancy's in the womb and not ectopic, and to see how far along they are? And he said, absolutely, I would support that. Do you think women in need should be supported with material resources like baby clothes, diapers, formula, and referrals to additional services so they don't feel trapped into choosing abortion. And he said, well, yeah, I do. By now, picking up on where she was headed, he asked, wait, do pregnancy centers do all that? Yes, they do. Most do. And many offer childbirth classes, parenting classes, and mentors for women and men. He paused and said, I had no idea. And she replied, maybe you support pregnancy centers after all. In fact, there was a recent Marist poll that indicated more than 4 in 5 Americans support the work of pregnancy resource centers. You see, a choice isn't truly a choice if someone feels trapped into it. The groups smearing pregnancy centers aren't pro-choice, they're pro-abortion, because only one choice benefits their business. Every day across Colorado, women and men are finding real choice through the compassionate care of pregnancy care organizations. So do you support your local pregnancy centers? We're here. We would love to talk to you more about what we do, but thank you for empowering women and men to choose life for their babies in a state that doesn't make it easy. God bless you.
And so I will say a lot of kind of the political discussion around, pregnancy centers came to a head last legislative session when they banned the pregnancy pill reversal and what they described as deceptive practices. And obviously, Bennett, Axworthy, as people who run pregnancy centers, not super thrilled about that. I do just want to throw out there, right, because I've covered abortion in Colorado for so long, very familiar with Rich. He's a nice gentleman. I actually had the opportunity to, he took me on a tour of a Life Network facility, and I went, and I will say, they're very upfront about their position, that they do not offer abortion. They have licensed medical people on staff, and I talked to them, and I saw all the facilities, and they do all of the things, but as kind of pro-abortion advocates kind of point out, there are some deceptive aspects to this, right? They do provide, supplies and things to parents in need and folks who are looking to have a baby instead of going with abortion. But those do require, attendance and parenting classes, and you get credit, baby bucks, and you transfer them in their little store after you've gone through the parenting classes, and some of the arguments are that that's kind of a coercive practice. And these organizations are, again, obviously very connected to faith institutions. I know, when I was looking into the Education for a Lifetime stuff, that in particular was sponsored extensively by, Womack Ministries in Woodland Park. One of the big partners that Life Network has during their annual Walk for Life event here in Colorado Springs is Womack and Charis Bible College, and a Caring Pregnancy Center in Pueblo. Axworthy's organization has ties to Forging Pueblo, which has been involved in various other kind of, again, conservative Christian political activism within the Pueblo City Council, particularly their efforts to ban abortion at the municipal level. We also heard from Senator Mark Baisley, who earlier this year announced he's planning on running for governor. He's joining kind of a crowded field of Republican nominees. Greg Lopez recently announced that he's going to be running for governor. Teller County Sheriff Jason Mikesell is also running for governor. So it will be, and Colorado Rep Scott Bottoms. So it's just going to be a lot of big personalities in the Republican gubernatorial race this year. Very excited. So anyway, here's Baisley kind of briefly addressing the March for Life.
Sorry, so hey, I just got a moment. I'm going to read a verse that's familiar to you, and I'm going to visit it with you for a moment. The verse that says, if my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and seek my face, and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven and I will forgive their sin and will heal their land. We've all heard that, right? Yeah. So who does it depend on for turning away from the sin and healing the land? It doesn't say, once the Democrats finally turn their wicked ways, it doesn't say, when everybody or a majority, it says, if my people who are called by my name, that's us. That is us. So, God's people, we will humble ourselves, pray, and seek His face, turn from our wicked ways. He promises to hear from heaven, forgive our sin, and heal our land. Let's do that collectively. Thank you all for being here, for always being here and standing for the most basic of rights, life itself. God bless you all. God bless Colorado.
And of course, at these events, there were some, counter-protesters, some pro-abortion people that came out to kind of talk about this. Here's a clip of Jeff Hunt trying to engage some anarchists in a debate.
We know who you are. We don't want you around here. Get the fuck out, cracker.
Okay, well, I'm just going to stand here.
Honky ass motherfucker.
So, what is it about the pro-life movement that gets you?
You're not pro-life, you're forced birthers.
Forced birthers? Yeah. Do we force somebody to get pregnant?
Did you ejaculate it?
I don't know how I'm forcing other people.
I don't know, you look a little rapey.
So, you came out to a pro-life rally to be in opposition to it. You're with your parents.
I can't hear you. There's too much bullshit flying out your mouth, bud. Man, that shit smells.
Do you believe that life matters?
Yeah, definitely. Go ahead, walk away.
And, then of course we got to the march itself, which, pretty boring, right? They left the Capitol, they marched in a loop, they had signs and banners and flags and all of those things. It was very cinematic, right? It was the spectacle. addition to we've kind of talked about how for conservatives, abortion is this moral, ethical kind of faith issue, right? Also, very obviously, abortion is a medical issue. And when we look at the national landscape, a number of states, particularly Texas and Idaho, have enacted really restrictive anti-abortion laws. And this has led to an increase in maternal mortality in Texas, and it's led to a OBGYN shortage in Idaho that's causing kind of this crisis for pregnant women who are seeking, pregnancy care to have babies, take abortion completely out of the mix, right? Anti-abortion policies have this kind of effect of, causing problems for doctors. It's causing problems for doctor training programs, right? Are, OBGYN students going to be going to school in states where they have these kind of practices? Are they going to be able to do all the things, all the procedures and trainings that medical licensure allows? It's causing a lot of havoc at the state level in other states. And that's also causing problems here in Colorado as well, because Colorado is bearing the brunt of people seeking care from these states, right? Abortion funds like the Cobalt Abortion Fund, spending large portions of the money that they're giving out is going to these out-of-state patients who are now seeking care here in Colorado. And this also has an impact on wait times for care, right? So people who start seeking an abortion earlier in pregnancy are not actually able to get one until much later in their pregnancy because of the backlog. And that can cause problems in states like Kansas, where they have a gestational limit of 22 weeks. So someone who finds out they're pregnant at 10, 12 weeks, goes to seek care, might have to wait. And then because of that wait time, they're outside of the state statute, things like that. And those lead to other difficulties for a lot of folks. So these anti-abortion policies cause a lot of problems. And from a medical perspective, there's all kinds of reasons why people seek abortion. While I was at the March for Life, I was able to speak with a young woman who had an abortion and kind of shared her story with me. So here's that. Could you tell me your name?
Yes, my name is Birdie. I live right around the corner here, right by the Capitol building.
And what brings you out today?
I am protesting this pro-life movement here because, one, abortion saved my life, and I support women and what women want to do with their bodies, and also I'm a big advocate of the separation of church and state, and for some reason some people don't totally understand that still.
Gotcha. So could you tell me a little, you said abortion saved your life, could you tell me a little bit more about that? Could you kind of elaborate?
Yeah, so when I had a really kind of troublesome teen years, and I was homeless when I was 17 and 18, and I was assaulted by homeless people. I got pregnant, and I ended up going to treatment. I got my way into treatment shortly after that, but that's when I found out I was pregnant, and also found out that means I would have to be off all of my medication, and I'm bipolar. Anytime I've been off my bipolar meds, I have almost killed myself. So it's really, really scary, and I was 18. I didn't have anyone around me. I was alone in treatment, and couldn't afford, I'm gonna get emotional, I couldn't afford it. And having that opportunity to get an abortion allowed me to, one, stay on my life-saving medication, and two, successfully complete treatment and get the help I needed for myself to get myself back on my feet.
Gotcha. Anything else you want to say about today's event or what you do? Are you part of a group or anything? Or?
I'm not part of a group. I just, I really feel really strongly about this topic, and and women should have autonomy, and I think that's just a bottom line. So that's how I feel about it. I'm out here and doing my piece, even if we're just a couple ants in a big fucking field of people. Yeah, sorry, swear.
No, you're fine. All right, well, thank you so much. So not only, is abortion this moral and ethical issue, not only is it this medical issue, but it's also a policy issue. And we've seen here in Colorado that it's a wildly successful policy issue. As we mentioned, Amendment 79 passed. 62% of voters supported it. Efforts to ban or restrict abortion within the last 10 years have all failed overwhelmingly. Legislation proposed to ban or restrict abortion, from Scott Bottoms and former, GOP chair Dave Williams when he was in the legislature, overwhelmingly gets, shut down at the legislature. And in other states that have put abortion on the ballot, it has been an overwhelmingly winning issue. The pro-life movement has kind of taken some credit for victories in states like Florida, where there was a ballot initiative that didn't pass. And I think it's either Iowa or Nebraska. I'm sorry, I'm doing this off the cuff here. That also had a ballot measure that didn't quite make it through. But other states, it's been overwhelmingly successful. And this has become an issue that more and more Democrats are kind of flocking to and trying to get on board with. And we're seeing a lot more like kind of pro-abortion messaging in that sense. So it's, like I said, very complicated issue, a lot of pieces to it. And you've got Republicans on one side and Democrats on the other. And that is kind of the state of things here in the Fever Swamp. If you've enjoyed this podcast, do me a favor, even if you haven't enjoyed the podcast, right? Just subscribe and and leave a comment, okay? Comments help with engagement. And this is the perfect subject, right? So please go in the comments, tell me, what do you think about abortion? Follow us on various social media platforms, Colorado Times Recorder. We're on Facebook and Blue Sky and Twitter. And folks, stay safe out there.